right, welcome everyone to our first call of the new year. Hope everyone had a good holiday season. We're ready to get back at it here for 2025. Joining us on our first call, a couple members from Ware Racing. First, we're joined by driver Tim Brown, driver of the number 15 Ford Mustang Dark Horse, getting ready to make his debut at the Clash here at Bowman Gray Stadium. If you've got a question for Tim, by all means, raise your hand in the Zoom platform, or send me a chat and I can get you in line however you'd like to do that. We'll have Tim for about 15, 20 minutes here, and then we'll be joined immediately afterwards by owner Rick Ware. So, Tim, let me just kick it off. I mean, you're trading in a number 83 for a number 15, and it's a different kind of car, but just, what's the feeling like? You've had a few weeks to digest this news. Just your thoughts on this opportunity that's presented yourself here soon.
Man, it's honestly been overwhelming. When Rick and I talked about it, a month or so ago, it's like, man, yeah, it'd be cool. And then now that it's actually coming to fruition, it's like mind blowing. And anybody that knows me, very seldom am I ever speechless, but this has kind of made me speechless. I was talking to Mike Arning a few minutes ago. I never knew that this would blow up to be such a big story, and how cool it is for myself and my family and here, everybody at RWR and everyone in the short track racing world is pretty cool news.
All right, we got some questions here for you, so we'll kick it off here first with Davey Siegel. Hey, Davey.
Hey guys, Happy New Year. Thanks for the time, Tim. I'm curious, in the last handful of weeks since you've been announced to have the ride, how many people are hitting you up for advice or tips or tricks of the trade ahead of this race, and how cool is that if so?
Actually, it's right the opposite. So a lot of the Cup drivers that I'm buddies with, like, man, I was going to get you to be my driver coach or something, but so now I don't even talk with those guys because we want to go run as good as we can and not help those guys out at all.
What's the process been like at the shop instead of working on it, wrenching on it, actually figuring out how you're going to feel inside the cockpit, seat fitting, all those different things?
Well, we're actually working on seat stuff today. But yeah, man, it's actually really cool with the guys that we have here. We're a tight knit little family here at RWR, and everybody's really taking a lot of pride in the car that we're building for myself to go run up there. And it's a really neat deal to be able to work on a car that you're going to drive with a bunch of your closest friends and coworkers. It's a pretty cool deal.
Cool. Thanks, Tim.
All right, let's go on to Jonathan. Hey, Jonathan.
Hey, good morning, guys. Thanks for taking the time with us. I was curious to know, if you guys talked about if this is a success, if this could lead to maybe other opportunities behind the wheel, other short tracks and races in the future.
That'd be a better question for Rick. I'm a racer, man. I'd race anytime, anywhere that I could. So you'd probably have to ask Rick that one.
Sure. Thank you.
Tim, I'm just curious too, before we get to Zach, you've done some testing in the past in Cup cars and all that stuff. So this isn't totally foreign to you. I mean, is there a comfort level there that you have?
Yeah, for sure. I've done a lot of testing on the Cup cars over the years, just not this particular car. But as far as the weight and the power and all that, I'm definitely used to that for years and years of testing with the things. But this new car is definitely different. So there'll be a learning curve there. But we'll go do our best, and hopefully we're competitive and have a shot at winning this thing.
All right, let's go on to Zach. Hey, Zach, go ahead.
Thanks, Dan. Hey, Tim. Just wondering, I know this inaugural event is going to put Bowman Gray on the radar for a lot of people who may not have ever seen it. How would you describe to someone who's never seen Bowman Gray, how would you describe it to them?
Well, they call it the Madhouse for a reason. That place is super exciting because it's the pinnacle of short track racing. Like when you're driving a modified there, the thing's turning 8,500 RPMs and really loud, but you can hear the fans cheering you or booing you while you're actually racing. And I don't know that there's any Cup track that you could hear that. So it's definitely different. The fans there are super passionate. Just the history of the place. It's going to be an awesome show, I believe.
And I know you've grown up there, pretty much all your life, and your family history runs deep there. You kind of mentioned the history. Do you feel it when you get there? And I know it's been there pretty much since the start of NASCAR. Do you feel it when you walk through the gate?
Absolutely. And, one cool thing about racing there is, just about every Saturday night, a family will come through there, and they may be from Florida or California or Texas. And they're like, hey, we took our family vacation to come here and see this place, and then, go up to the Blue Ridge Mountains or go do some cool stuff around North Carolina, but they actually spend their family vacation just to come and witness the stadium. Just that's how historical the place is, and man, that's pretty neat. And now the Cup Series is coming there. Um, man, it's just going to boost it even more, I believe.
Awesome. Thanks.
Tim, I'm curious because I've been to Bowman Gray multiple times with my son. We've watched you out there doing your thing, but the old guardrail is gone. We got safer barriers. We see them power washing the press box. I mean, they're putting a new coat of paint. And I mean, what's it going to be like to go in and really see this in a new light? The stadium's going to look totally different, just aesthetically. What do you think about that?
It is. I've actually seen a couple photos floating around, and it doesn't even look like the same place. Like you see an aerial view of it, the track looks similar, but as far as the new walls and the safer barrier and the new catch fence and lighting and all that, it's like a brand new place. So it's how cool is that too, right? That's something that we and the people that race there weekly and the fans that come there weekly will be able to enjoy that also for a long time to come, not just for one weekend here.
Exactly. All right, let's go to Bob Pockros. Hey, Bob.
Hey, I'm just curious, Tim, how do you think the Cup cars are going to race there? What is that race going to be like?
Man, I'm hoping it's going to be a really good race. The fear that I have is the cold. If it's really, really cold, like 30 degrees and the track's cold and the tires are cold, that, it'll be slipping and sliding quite a bit. Racing at the stadium is hard. I think it's going to be more difficult than even racing at the Coliseum in LA, just because of the asphalt difference and the weather, the temperature difference. But it's going to be the same for everybody. So I think the bottom will definitely be dominant, and just got to have your car turning really good in the center and have plenty of forward drive, and you'll be fine.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bob. Let's go to Dustin Long. Hello, Dustin.
Hey, Tim, a few things. Hey, I wanted to ask, I saw where you got started, at least in NASCAR, with working with Cale Yarborough's team while in high school. Can you give me the story about that, about how a high schooler got on with Cale and what you were doing then?
So I was right out of high school, but my grandfather, Eb Clifton, he owned race cars that raced at the stadium, since the beginning of the stadium. And I grew up in his shop, and he was buddies with Junior Johnson and Cale and all those guys because he had some Grand National cars, they called them back in the day, that ran the circuit. And I was actually going to go to college and be an engine design engineer because my grandpa thought that'd be the best thing to do. Well, he had some conversations with some people, and Ken Glenn was the crew chief for Cale Yarborough at the time. And Ken was like, "Hey man, I really need a guy now, and we'll pay you pretty decent." So that's how that started, and been doing it ever since.
I know when you've won the championships at Bowman Gray, especially in recent years, been a lot of family and friends there to celebrate with you. How many do you anticipate having with you to watch this Cup debut next month?
Um, as many as I can have there for sure. My son Cam and my daughter Marley. She's only 3, but she's already a racer. Like everything that she and Cam do is a competition. So definitely got to have them there, and my wife Megan to support us. My brother's been my right hand man, my entire racing career. Got to have him there. My mom, hopefully, and just anybody and everybody that's had a part to do with Tim Brown from 1992 when I started racing till today. I'd love to be there and have a part in it. At least.
How old is Cam? How old is Cam, and does he fully understand what this moment is? Is Daddy getting a race in NASCAR?
Yes, he's 8 years old, and he absolutely 100% understands the the importance of it and how big it is because that's all he talks about. Uh, since I was able to show him the first rendering of the car that Rick shared with me and Robbie, I took it home and showed Cam and told him you can't tell anybody. And man, he teared up and he's like, "Dad, this is so cool. I can't believe it." And then he went, like once we made the announcement with Mike Arning and all, Cam was going to school and telling all of his, 7 and 8-year-old buddies that his dad's going to be a Cup driver and all that. And just Marley's talking about it, and Cam, it's so cool, man. It makes me proud just for that side of it all alone. It makes makes it feel like to myself that all the work that I've put in and sacrifices I've made for 33 years of doing this is coming to fruition.
A couple other quick questions. I appreciate the time. What are the things that you're doing on the car that you will drive? Are you doing the suspension parts, or what are you working on? What on the car that you will drive will have your hands on it?
Pretty much, I'd say 60% of the car. Definitely have a big part of all the suspension parts, the racks, the steering, help install the motor, the seat interior, rear suspension, like all of it, basically. You know what I mean? I don't really have anything to do with the body hanging and things like that, but all the mechanical stuff of it, I'll have a part in.
And I'm assuming you've sat in the car, or at least the shell of the car at some point, at this point. And if so, what, look, you're a racer, you've seen that view from a viewpoint of the modified and other vehicles that you've raced. But what was it like to sit in the car, maybe for the first time, or was there anything that's hit you in this process of like, wow, this dream is coming true?
Well, here at RWR, I drive our race cars on the chassis dyno every Friday. So I sit on them quite a bit. But this one's a little bit different because I know that this is actually a race car that I'm going to go into battle with. So it's pretty cool from that side of it to just sit in it the moment that, hey, I'm actually going to get to race this one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dustin. Let's move on over to Claire B. Lang. Hello, Claire.
Hello. Hey, thank you, Tim, for coming on. So I love what you said about going into battle with this car at Bowman Gray Stadium. How aggressive do you think it will be? How aggressive do you plan to be to go into battle? And then how much do you think the advantage will go to those that have more experience there than others that don't, although they might be great NASCAR racers?
Yeah, that's great questions, Claire. And I think you're going to have to be super aggressive just to get the tires to fire to make lap times. I also think that any driver that's had any laps around the stadium is going to have an advantage over any driver that hasn't, simply for the fact that the grip level there is totally different. The line's different. That place is just unique. It's flat, completely flat. There's no banking at all. And that's a unique place all on its own. And as far as aggressive, we hope our car is fast enough that you really don't have to be that aggressive, but you'll just have to go into each circumstance and do what you have to do to get in the show and run as well as you can. If that was putting a bumper to somebody and moving them to get by us, what we have to do.
That's good. And also, I wanted to ask you about hooking up with Rick Ware and the status of that team, what you found there, what it's been like for you. We're going to talk to Rick Ware next. What about that team?
So a little tidbit of information there is like myself and Rick and my brother, we've been friends, goes back for 30 years, I would say 25 at least. When Rick was racing himself years and years ago, me and my brother were young and just trying to work on race cars and do things that we could to race our cars. So we would help Rick out and actually work for Rick some. And then when I departed from RFK, Rick and Robbie offered me a job here at RWR to work full time. And it's like home to me. Like it is really a good place to work. Rick and Robbie and Craig, Ken, everybody here, Tommy, all the people are super. Got a great group of guys out here working on race cars. It's a bunch of racers here building race cars to go compete. And that's what I am. So I fit right in here, right at home. And it's really been a blessing to me to be part of RWR, and then just to get the opportunity to drive for Rick and Lisa and the whole Ware family is it is just unbelievable to me, honestly.
Going to be fun to watch you race. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Claire. Let's go on over to Kelly Crandall. Hello, Kelly.
Hello, Dan. Hi, Tim. I want to go back to what you said there about the initial conversation when it came up with Rick to do this. Can you walk us through how did this come about? And did you ever think that an opportunity to run a cup car, let alone at Bowman Gray, where you have so much history, did you think that ever would be possible?
I didn't. I'll be honest with you. Once I turned about 30 years old, I kind of gave up on my dream of my lifelong dream of being a cup driver, just because I'd seen that transition to where, one, you either had to be 12 or 13 years old and get signed, or two, you had to, have big money to pay an owner to let you drive. So I'd already given up on that dream, but I actually think it was a text that Rick sent me. He's like, "Hey man, did you hear that the Clash might go to Bowman Gray next year?" It's like, what? And then Rick was something like, "Man, if it happens, we'll see what we can do to get you in the car." And then I was like, "Heck yeah, how cool would that be?" And when finally the announcement was made that the Clash was coming to the stadium, I think Rick and Robbie were the first ones to call me that night or text me or something, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna make this happen." And I was like, "Heck yeah!" So naturally, I want to go tell everybody, right? But you can't. So it was. It's been tough, and I tell you, the hardest part of this for me has been keeping, because I've known about it for a while, right? Rick and Robbie and everybody's been working so hard behind the scenes to put this together for me, and we've had a bunch of conversations, but to even keep it from my wife and my kids and my brother and my race team and like influential people in my life that I really care about, that's the hardest part of it, right? Like, because you love these people so much and you want to be able to share everything with them. And when it come out, I've had people come, like, "Man, I thought we were tight. Why didn't you tell me this?" Like, couldn't I? You know what I mean? So it's been a really cool experience so far, and I can't thank Rick and Lisa and everybody at RWR enough for this opportunity.
So along those same lines, you also mentioned about the reaction that this has garnered. Were you seeing any of that for yourself, or were people informing you of how big a deal and how positive reaction this news has gotten?
So Mike Arning and his staff's been awesome because I don't do social media. I try to stay away from it just because, like, as a racer, there's probably more people out there that don't like you than there are that do like you. And I'm a pretty passionate guy, so it's best if I just stay off of Facebook and social media. But Mike's done great of sharing like all the posts and things like that. And when other drivers, cup drivers and owners are reaching out to you, it's like, "Man, this is cool. This is really cool." And like, "Hey, this is awesome. Good job. Congrats." And then you realize, like, man, this is a really big deal. You know what I mean? So just very blessed and fortunate to have this opportunity, and uh, how cool. It's just so cool.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go back and we'll close it out with Zach. Go ahead, Zach.
Thanks again, Dan. Tim, I know you've been doing this for quite a few years now in terms of working with Cup Series teams and, during the week, and then, come weekend time, you're at Bowman Gray or wherever else. How is that balancing act? I imagine there's not a bunch of spare time in the life of Tim Brown.
Cool. I hope my wife's listening because the balancing act falls on her, right? Because basically Megan has to run our entire household. As far as getting the kids to school and home and feeding them and putting them to bed, because like my day starts at 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning and it ends about 10 o'clock at night, because I live an hour and a half from work and then my shop's 15 minutes from the house. So I've dedicated my whole life to it, and she knew that going in. Like when we dated, I was a racer, right? So we got married and she kind of understood it. But it's just what I do. It's what racers do. We do what we have to do to go compete at the highest level that we can. And it's tough. I really don't have a balancing act. It's a hard conversation every now and then to have. Like, in my world, and I hate to say this, I can't really prioritize anything because working for a cup team or even on my race car, you never know what that day has in store for you. If NASCAR makes a rule change or someone comes out with a part that's better to make us faster, like for my deal, then you got to stay and get it done, right? So it's very important as a racer to have a wife that understands and doesn't complain and fuss about it too much. So Megan is how I survive basically.
Right on. And you kind of mentioned, with the fans and how passionate they are, and people that come from Florida, who knows where, all over to come and witness the stadium. What about the locals that, come there, just are there in the stands every week, sit in the same place every week, from Kernersville, Lexington, Winston, all these different places? How do you describe them and just what their passion is like, for regulars week in, week out?
Well, it's really, really cool because I've done it long enough now that I've seen fans of mine that have kids and have grown up and still be fans, and those people have kids that are fans. So I've raced long enough now to see like a couple generations of of fans come through there, and it's really cool how they all sit in the same place every week, and they have for 25 or 30 years, and that's really cool. And I tell this story a lot. I grew up there, watching racing and sit in the stands, and I knew that I was going to race the following year, and I was telling the family that I was sitting with, like, hey, I'm gonna be out there racing next year in a modified. And they're like, man, you're crazy. There ain't no way. Because here I am, just a little kid that's, been watching races there for a long time. And then sure enough, I wind up racing. And they're, older now, but they still come by and it's like, man, we can't believe we sat in the stands with you 30 some years ago and you told us you'd race. And now you've won 101 races and 12 championships here. And that's really cool just to have that kind of following. And they're there every Saturday night that place is open. They're there, and not only them. There's thousands of families that are like that, or they're there religiously every Saturday night.
Thank you.
Well, Tim, I personally can't wait to hear drivers' introductions, because there's one thing about Tim Brown is he's going to get a reaction. He's going to get bad, indifferent. You mentioned the name Tim Brown on a Saturday night at Bowman Gray, and the crowd goes nuts both ways. So we wish you the best of luck. Congratulations on this opportunity, and I'm sure we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thank you all for having me on. Appreciate it.
All right, what we'll do, we'll take a quick pause here. Mike will go get Rick, and we'll just switch Tim and Rick out in the same chair, and we'll be back with Rick here in just a second. Thanks, Tim. All right, Rick Ware, now owner of the number 15 Ford Mustang Dark Horse, joining us here on the call. Rick, we got a good group of media here joining us. We appreciate you taking some time. Good to see you again. Happy New Year. Just talk about putting Tim in the car and just kind of what went into that, and then we'll get some questions lined up and we'll go to the media here in just a second. But just to kind of the thought about how this whole thing started.
Sure. Yeah. Listen to Tim was a little short on some of the fill of the information, because there's so much backstory to him and his family and the stuff in the past. So this really had started back in the Gen 6 car when the modifieds had been gone from Martinsville for, I don't know, 10 years or so. And then the modifieds are going to come back. And I said, man, we need to figure out a way to maybe get you there for that race, because he was going to be looking forward to running that race with the modifieds. And I actually talked to Burt Myers as well. This is when we were running a couple full-time cars in Gen 6. And so the idea was to still they did a NASCAR to get them both approved to be at Martinsville, which we did. And then anybody that follows Bowman Gray and those guys knows that we got an inherent storyline immediately, right? So that almost happened for a variety of different reasons. It just didn't. And so, Tim was talking about going to work for Yarborough's back in 1994. And actually, Tim was already working for me kind of part-time with my career. And Ken Glenn, who was a neighbor of mine in Greensboro, was the crew chief for him. And he introduced me to Tim probably in the 92 or 93. And so we've been friends ever since, and just a great guy. And then we got involved with him, actually, I think it was 2008, which I think is the first year of the Madhouse. And we kind of teamed up with him there and we had the Circle K Thirstbuster car, and he won the championship. And it was just a great scenario. And so we've since worked with him on all kinds of different projects and done some different racing with his backup car at different times with different drivers. And so he's just a fantastic guy, and extremely hard worker, and just a great race driver. And, in my opinion, race drivers to a certain degree, given the tools, they can compete with a wide variety of people on certain tracks. If we were taking him to a road course, he's probably going to struggle. And maybe even some different size ovals, but he's run modifieds in 3/4 miles and half miles of Bowman Gray. So he's a racer, and it really wasn't much of a stretch. It was just a little bit unique to make your debut at something like the Clash as opposed to someplace like Martinsville. Then we're talking about it.
Yep, gotcha. All right, let's kick it off with some questions here. We'll start with Bob. Go ahead.
Yeah, Rick. Just how long? I mean, was it pretty much a no-brainer for you once they decided the Clash would be there to put him in the car?
Well, so when they started talking about it, immediately, me and Tim started scratching our head, and And the thought process was, hey, let's go see the feasibility of it. It was going to depend a lot on whether or not we were running. Was it going to be a third entry as an open, or was it going to be the second car as an open? There's a lot of different scenarios, but we were pretty adamant that we were going to do all that we could do to take him there. It'd been different if it would have been across country because there's a lot more involved. But being that it's local, being that he's a huge following, it just kind of made sense to finalize what we actually started probably 3 or 4 years ago or so, or maybe a little bit, probably about that far back to begin with. And he was talking about working on the cars, et cetera. And if anybody knows Tim, he's extremely anal. He'll push people out of the way and make sure he's going to touch every piece of that car. So he selfishly has an agenda to touch every piece, make it as good as he feels that he can make it. And that's the way he is with his modified as well. I mean, he's hands-on. So it's cool that he can, work on something that's going to be his car. And he takes a lot of pride in that. And frankly, me and Lisa take some pride in being able to offer that opportunity to Tim because we've known him and his wife and his family for forever. And, when me and Robbie started talking about it, I was like, man, we got to figure it out and make it happen.
And, what are your plans for that 15 car for this year? And do you have like a timetable to name a driver for the 51?
We're working really hard on that, Bob. Every day we're getting closer and putting pieces together. That's a big 800-pound gorilla that we're piecing together bit by bit. And we'll be making some announcements soon on that. But it has given us the opportunity to do this deal with Tim, and which is what we're just extremely excited about right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Let's go over to Claire B. Lang. Go ahead, Claire.
Thanks for your time. Tim was talking about how he doesn't read social media and that sometimes he'll pass positive comments on social media about him doing this. How much pressure is put on him for Rick Ware Racing, to get her done versus because of his talent versus going there and this being a really good endeavor? Talk about what it means for Rick Ware Racing and what you see that he doesn't see in himself, that he's so shy about looking at what people are saying about him doing this.
Well, again, which I just mentioned about being a race driver, I view him as a race driver first. Now, Bowman Gray is truly unique in that when we went to the Clash, they laid down fresh asphalt, and it was amazing. I couldn't believe that the asphalt stayed in good shape and it was smooth, and there was a lot of grip. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they tear it up and relaid it again. The difference with this is that it is extremely porous. It's very wore out. I'm not so sure you're not trying to hook up on pieces of the stone in between the asphalt that's gone away. And so, if you've gone there a fair amount and watched those guys qualify on evenings when it has been, cold, more so than normal, you have to have a lot of patience. It is so easy to overdrive those corners, which it is in any quarter mile, but especially there. And the exiting is going to be even narrow because you're losing approximately just shy of 3 feet on each side because of the soft wall barriers. But if there's a value to having, literally, a million laps, around a place, there is an advantage. These are the best guys in the world racing these cars. And so they have good cars and they're good drivers. We're putting our best foot forward. I think he's putting a lot of expectations on himself just because that's the kind of person he is, right? He's one of those guys where I'm not going to go somewhere unless I think I can win. And that's a little bit tougher attitude to have at the cup level because there's a lot of other guys that have the same attitude, just like any other short track. But, we're trying to give him, I think, all that, anybody could. I think he's going to do really well. I think if you look at, some of the great drivers that haven't even made the main events the last 2 years, it's not so much a function of they are not driving. It's a function of the whole total package just couldn't get that last thousandths of a second. I mean, the field is so tight. What I like about having him there is, it was mentioned earlier, normally half the crowd that's sold out hates and boos for Tim. The other half immediately love him. But I feel like even the people that may hate him at Bowman Gray are happy for him because they respect what he's done. They respect the tenure, and the fact that he's he's a good race driver, and sometimes you hate good race drivers. And so that portion I like. I think it's good for the overall sport. It's so cool that NASCAR has taken over this track, and they're giving it a coat of paint, but it still has the feel. It still has an old school feel. And if people haven't been there, you can't even, it's like the first time going to Bristol. If you haven't been there, it's hard to equate and explain it to somebody. And it's just going to be a win-win for everybody. And I'm just really excited about it.
Do you like that it's unpredictable and hard in an exhibition race? That, what you're defining is that we don't really know what's going to happen, and it's going to be very difficult.
100%. Again, just mentioning some of the people that are outstanding short track racers that didn't make it in the clash, and some that did, that were a surprise. If we were going to a mile and a half or back at Daytona, I think, you could probably pick 10 cars that you would expect to be qualified up front, right? And then, teams would team up and, but here, I mean, if you happen to get some forward bite and get the car turned and not overdrive the corner, I think you're going to have some really great championship drivers that they may just overdrive the corner because they had to go out early or it was just colder than they thought. So yes, I think from start to finish, from practice all the way to the checkered flag, I think the whole world's going to be watching, and literally around the world, because there's no other racing going on at that time of the year.
Thanks, Rick, and good luck. Okay.
Claire, thank you very much.
You got it.
All right, let's move over to Kelly Crandall. Hello, Kelly, go ahead.
Hello again, Dan. Hey, Rick.
Hey, Kelly.
I owe you a text message, by the way. That's coming. Aside from performance, you and Tim have both talked very positively about hopefully how he can run at Bowman Gray. What else are you hoping that he'll get from this experience, being able to run this race?
Well, racers are inherently always looking forward. So, there's talk of, what if we could put together something and maybe run the second Martinsville later on in the year? And that's what racers do, right? We're addicts and we're trying to find a way to go do something cool. I think there's a lot of opportunity potentially for that. Is this a scenario that we can build a base of local support, and he does this for the next 10 years if it's there? I'm not sure, but what I want him to get out of it is obviously, as a former driver that didn't make it, obviously, and as team owner now, I understand what it's like to go do something that you've dreamed about doing. And, running a cup car, for anybody that's grown up around here, I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's the holy grail of motorsports. And I'm just glad to be able to be part of being able to give that to him. And the fact that he has his sons there, I brought my kids there at a young age when he was, still racing and winning championships, and for him to be able to have his son there, his family, and for him to be able to be at a place that's kind of his house. I hope he can just absorb it. I hope the weather is fantastic and the place is off the hook, and it may lead to a whole lot more things, and that's definitely a possibility. But for sure, I want him just to absorb it and enjoy it, because as racers, I mean, we're here today, and before we got on this call, we're talking about 2 weeks later at Daytona, and then we got to go straight to it. I mean, you're just always going. You're burning through the moments and the memories, and so I just hope he can just absorb it, and I hope he just has a fantastic run.
We've heard about the reception and how well this has played on social and how cool a lot of people think this is for Tim. For you, Rick, what has it meant for you to be involved in being able to give him this opportunity, and as well see also such positive reception for you and your program being able to do this?
Well, I think it, from a marketing standpoint, it worked out really well. And sometimes that's part of what you have to do as a business and a race team. But I can promise you, it started with doing something really cool for a really good friend. The byproduct is that it has garnered, a whole lot of attention. And the reason being is because he's that outstanding of an individual. And so I'm thankful that we could be able to do it. And Lisa's been around, and Lisa was excited about doing it. And there have been many nights that we've been there late with our boys, with him, and he's been instrumental with helping my family through the development and driver approval process, and throughout the years. And so we are like a family, and we see each other on a regular basis, and but we work really hard. So it's one of those things that it's hard to have win-wins, especially where we are in the Cup Series, trying to claw up both performance-wise and stature and acceptability. We've worked really, really hard, and Robbie and Tommy Baldwin have really been a part of that. And of course, you have Tommy, who's knee deep in modifieds as well. So that there's over here at RWR, it's kind of the modifieds against the world, but it's just cool. I mean, I'm very thankful, and part of how it's grown too is that Tim mentioned earlier, got to give a hand out to Mike Arning at True Speed, because he's helped kind of educate the whole country about what's happening, and I think it's going to be good. Good for the sport, good for television, and good for the Cup Series.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly. Let's move on over to Dustin Long. Go ahead, Dustin.
Thanks. Hey, Rick, as you referenced, you're part of a unique fraternity with those who have competed in one Cup race and giving the opportunity to Tim. And it was interesting when you talked about hoping he doesn't burn through the experiences or the memories. And I'm just curious, what are the special memories, and what does it mean for you to have gotten that one Cup start? Obviously, I know as a racer you wanted a lot more, but to be able to say, hey, you did have that one Cup start in 1990 at Watkins Glen, you were out on the track and did those things. What are the things that you experienced and that still stick with you 35 years later?
Well, for me, using that particular race as an example, I won't say that I raced against the greatest names in racing, but I got to compete with the greatest names in racing. So, that was, that's part of the people that you look up to, and what it took to even make that happen. It was, it was insurmountable, especially at that time and where I was, and to be able to do that. And even that was a bizarre scenario, because I subbed for Rick Mast, who was running a race, I think at, in either Orange County or South Boston. There was a conflict, and it really wasn't a road course racer, and I had road course experience. So we filled in for Bobby Jones in the 22 car that Rick Mast normally drives. So it was a bizarre set of circumstance, but it was like I was on cloud nine. I was on cloud nine, and so, but it comes and goes, and all you think about is trying to get to that next scenario, and so I'm. Me and Lisa like the fact that, I want to say in a 10-year period, I'm pretty confident statistic-wise, we've probably given more drivers their first Cup start than I'm going to say probably the top 10 teams combined. And maybe those stats are a little off, but it's pretty significant. And part of that is just the opportunity. And, I'm a racer, and there's a soft spot there. And I do see things through the eyes of people when you had good weekends, bad weekends, and this got announced so relatively early in that I'm happy that he's been able to. It's been a month and a half or 2-month process for him, as opposed to, hey, somebody got hurt, you fit in the seat, you want to drive, and you have 24 hours. He's being able to really absorb it, and that's important to me, just as a friend and seeing things and being a family and racing. That's important to me and Lisa, and to be able to do those things.
So, and like you talk about, this is a different situation where there's a lot more time. What is it like to see this experience through his eyes? As somebody who had that shorter window to see this, how are you experiencing it, or how are you, in a way, experiencing your first Cup start all over again?
Well, for him, I think he had a probably a little bit longer ramp up for it, and it's cool just being at the shop, because as you mentioned, we have Tim Brown, and we have a young guy named Andre that's running at Bowman Gray in I think a mini stock car, and Chad Blount's run Xfinity cars, and Billy Plord's run late models up north, and we have a lot of racers here, and So it's great because there's a lot of, ribbing and joking around, and everybody's, expecting, they're expecting him to sit on the first couple rows, because if he's not in the first couple rows every Saturday night, he's pissed off and throwing something, right? So, it's good to kind of just kind of see how the interaction is, in your workplace, and just kind of to have the support. And he's actually been able to share it with a whole group of people that normally you wouldn't be able to, because these are his peers, and there's a lot of camaraderie, and there's just a whole lot of respect. So it's really cool from that standpoint.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
All right, Dustin, thanks. We'll close it out here with Claire B. Going back. Go ahead, Claire.
Yeah, a real quick follow-up. Do you have any sense of you guys putting a lot into this, and that some of the teams at Bowman Gray, I mean, everybody loves it's going there, that, it's not in LA, this is a great, great race, but that you might be putting more into it, and we may see surprising things out of Ware Racing? And I don't mean surprising that you wouldn't have gotten it done, but that you are really putting a lot into this particular race. And that's kind of exciting. But is that, you think others maybe aren't quite as much, or maybe looking sideways at Daytona?
I think because it's the first race of the year and there's a fair amount of time, and it's almost a little bit, the race is kind of a get out of jail free card, in that if you piss people off in points races, somebody may be putting you on a list. I saw, at the Clash last year, of course, if you're standing down, in the middle of the track, I mean, you can just see the car. It's just like being a Bowman Gray or a short track. You can't stand in the middle of Bowman, but you can really see what goes on. And there's a lot of roughing up, because you don't have any choice. I mean, you have to move somebody pretty much to get by, and that's the way it is at Bowman Gray on a regular basis. So I think a lot of people put a lot of effort into it, because first off, they're racers. They want to win. I don't know what it pays to win, but it's decent, but it's a cool trophy. It's the Clash. It's the first race of the year. It's the inaugural event. And for people liking to put those on their trophy case, it's really cool. Are we putting more than normal? I wouldn't say we are, but we're trying to go to every track right now, as prepared as we can. But going back to Tim Brown personally, he's the kind of guy that will triple check something just because of his OCDs of wanting it to be perfect. So he's going to prepare it like it's $1 million to win modified race, that if he doesn't win, he's expected to. So, but it's one of those races where, a lot of different people can win. So we are preparing for it from that standpoint.
Appreciate it. Good talking to you today.
Claire, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Rick, we know it's a busy time, and appreciate you joining us here for a few minutes, talk about this great story, and we'll look forward to seeing you here in a couple of weeks at the Clash.
We appreciate your time very much. So happy to do it. Happy New Year, guys.
All right, there's the checkered flag. Great job, driver.